What if I told you that a single, devastating week in the 13th century left a scar on human progress so deep that some have compared it to a 1,000-year setback? It happened in 1258, in a city that was one of the world's great intellectual capitals, Baghdad. At its core was a legendary center of knowledge called the House of Wisdom. But in just 7 days, an invading army didn't just slaughter its people, they drowned a civilization's worth of knowledge in the Tigris River. This is the story of how the destruction of one city became one of the greatest cultural catastrophes in history. For nearly 5 centuries, Baghdad was a glittering hub of learning and culture. Founded in the 8th century by the Abbasid Caliphate, it was a marvel of urban planning. At its peak, some estimates suggest it was home to nearly 1 million people, making it one of the largest cities on Earth. This was the heart of what many now call the Islamic Golden Age, a period of incredible scientific, artistic, and philosophical achievement. And at the center of this bustling metropolis was an institution that has become legendary, the Beit al-Hikmah, or House of Wisdom. Now, to call it just a library is a huge understatement. Imagine the entire internet, a world-class university, and a cutting-edge research lab all rolled into one vibrant ecosystem. While modern scholars debate its exact structure, there's no doubt it was the engine of a massive intellectual movement. The ruling caliphs, like Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Ma'mun, acted like venture capitalists for knowledge. They sponsored missions to gather important texts from across the known world, from Byzantium to India. Inside Baghdad's scholarly circles, a grand translation movement was in full swing. Think of it like a project to download the entire hard drive of ancient civilizations. Scholars from all different faiths, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim, painstakingly translated the works of Greek. Masters like Plato, Aristotle, and Euclid, texts that had become rare in Europe. A popular story even says that caliphs paid translators the weight of each finished book in solid gold. While that's probably a legend, it shows just how much this work was valued. But this wasn't just an archive. The knowledge gathered was a foundation to build upon. They weren't just hitting copy-paste, they were like master chefs taking ancient ingredients and creating entirely new cuisines of thought. It was in this environment that brilliant minds like the mathematician Al-Khwarizmi laid the groundwork for the discipline we now call algebra. Doctors made huge advances in medicine, building on the works of Hippocrates and Galen with their own clinical observations. Astronomers refined ancient models of the cosmos, making calculations so accurate they would be used for centuries. This was a place where the intellectual inheritance of ancient empires was synthesized into something new, creating a legacy that would shape the future of science far beyond Baghdad's walls. By the mid-13th century, however, the Abbasid Caliphate's political power had faded. The Caliph, al-Mustasim, ruled a state that was a shadow of its former self. This left the jewel of the world dangerously exposed to the storm that was gathering in the east. That storm had a name, the Mongol Empire. Led by Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu Khan, the Mongol war machine was pushing relentlessly westward. Hulagu's mission was simple: secure Mongol rule over Mesopotamia. Their strategy was brutal and brutally effective: submit and be spared, or resist and be annihilated. In late 1257, Hulagu arrived at the gates of Baghdad with a massive army of tens of thousands of soldiers, including expert siege engineers from China. He demanded that Caliph al-Mustasim surrender the city. The Caliph made a fatal mistake. Overconfident in his city's spiritual importance, he seemed to believe its reputation alone would be its shield. He answered with defiance, failed to rally any real military aid, and basically dared the Mongols to attack. They were happy to oblige. Around January 29, 1258, the siege began. Mongol forces surrounded the city. Their catapults, marvels of medieval military engineering, pounded the ancient walls. Baghdad's defenses, which had been neglected for years, stood little chance against the organized and technologically superior Mongol army. Within 2 weeks, the city's walls were breached. On February 10th, Baghdad surrendered. The Caliph had hoped for mercy. He received none. On February 13, 1258, Mongol soldiers stormed the city, and a week of unimaginable horror began. This wasn't just a conquest, it was a systematic effort to erase a city. Chroniclers of the time described staggering violence. The army slaughtered indiscriminately, civilians, clerics, and scholars alike. Palaces, hospitals, and mosques were burned to the ground. While medieval numbers are hard to verify, some sources claim that hundreds of thousands of people were killed in just 1 week. The caliph, al-Mustasim, was captured and forced to watch the murder of his people and the looting of his treasures. Libraries across the city were destroyed. Scholars were cut down alongside their life's work. And the books, centuries of accumulated learning, were thrown into the Tigris River. The accounts from that time have given us one of history's most haunting images. They say so many manuscripts were tossed into the river that the water ran black with ink. Another version of the story says the water ran red with the blood of the scholars. It was even said that the pile of books was so vast it formed a bridge a man could ride his horse across. Now, these descriptions are almost certainly symbolic metaphors, but they paint a powerful picture of the scale of the cultural devastation. In one brutal week, the intellectual heart of a civilization was ripped out. So let's get back to that big claim. Did humanity really lose 1,000 years of progress? Well, no. That's not how history works. The blueprint for a spaceship wasn't lost in the Tigris. The real loss was something far more fundamental. It wasn't like losing a single file, it was like smashing the motherboard of a civilization's computer. The fall of Baghdad destroyed the central processor, the entire intellectual ecosystem that drove innovation in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. What was lost was the system of funding, the infrastructure for learning, and the continuity of discovery built over centuries. The House of Wisdom wasn't just a building, it was a network of minds. And that network was shattered. However, not all was lost. Many crucial texts from Baghdad had already been copied and circulated, like files backed up to other servers. Intellectual life continued in cities like Cairo and Damascus. In fact, some scholars in Baghdad were spared and even continued their work under Mongol patronage. But the engine was broken. The destruction of Baghdad was like shattering a giant, clear lens into 1,000 smaller pieces. The light of knowledge could still get through, but it was no longer focused into one powerful, world-changing beam. That unique combination of state funding, a concentration of brilliant minds, and the Great Translation movement was gone. Instead of one powerhouse pushing everyone forward, knowledge was scattered and its transmission more fragile. The question isn't just what was destroyed, but what was never created as a result. What breakthroughs were delayed? What connections were never made because the scholars who might have made them were killed and their library was drowned in a river? That is the 1,000-year echo. It's not about a literal number of years lost, it's the story of lost momentum. While it's an oversimplification to say the Islamic Golden Age ended on a single day, the sack of Baghdad was a violent, abrupt turning point that shattered its epicenter. The story of Baghdad's fall is a devastating reminder of just how fragile civilization can be. It shows how quickly centuries of culture can be wiped out, like a great library built of glass. The image of the Tigris running black with ink isn't just a story about lost books, it's a warning about what happens when we lose the institutions that create, preserve, and cherish knowledge. While the 1,000 years is a metaphor for a loss we can never truly measure, the destruction of Baghdad represents a real turning point in world history. It was a catastrophic blow that ended an era, scattered an intellectual community, and left the world a poorer place. It reminds us that progress is never guaranteed, and that the light of wisdom, once it's extinguished, is painstakingly difficult to reignite. If you found this story of loss and legacy interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the pivotal moments of our shared past. Thanks for watching.